I'm Father J. Bryan Hehir. I'm the Montgomery Professor of Religion and Public Life at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. I teach the ethics of international relations and the role of religion in politics, and I came to Wellesley today to talk about the ethics of war. It is important to address the ethics of war because war is a permanent possibility in the world as we know it. War can be addressed in political, strategic, military terms, but the ethics of war seeks to place restraints on this tragic event whenever it occurs, and it seeks to direct the use of force to bring about justice rather than destruction when war becomes a necessary element. When I tried to lay out the ethics of war, my point was to do three things. First of all, to look historically at the way people have thought about the ethics of war. Secondly, to develop the moral framework that is commonly called the just war ethic. And then thirdly, to relate that framework of the just war ethic to three major problems that exist in the world today, namely nuclear weapons, humanitarian military intervention, and responses to terrorism. So the lecture as a whole moved through those three steps, and then at each stage I had to develop points in more detail. Well, I think the principal takeaway when you talk about the ethics of war is to convince people that it is possible to place moral restraints on the use of military force. Because if people believe that that is either irrelevant or that it is always inimical to people who have to carry out a military assignment, then I think the restraints that the ethics of war can impose are set aside, and I think that's a huge mistake. Again, it would be a better world if there were no war, but the world as we know it has the possibility for what might be called classical interstate war. The kind of thing that has gone on for centuries is still possible in our world. Secondly, there are a multiplicity of internal conflicts, and sometimes the human damage of those internal conflicts raises the question about whether military intervention from outside can help to bring the conflict to an end. That's the second kind of war that's possible. The third is the threat posed by terrorism. When terrorists use military measures, then the question about how to, in a sense, confront those and contain them is the third kind of war. So the takeaway is that war is a possibility in three different forms, and you need different forms of ethical restraint in each case. During the course of the morning, I learned from the Albright Fellows, the students at Wellesley, how they thought about the ethics of war, starting from scratch, and then we worked our way through some more systematic answers, and while they all didn't think of it the same way, for sure, they did think about it in systematic and intelligent fashion.